The adults who come home often become teenagers again. Number 8211. We all did it, even over a long weekend. Only number 8211. And our parents also tend to talk to us like they always did once we have crossed the. In the first moments after arriving at High Sunderland, Shelley drank her old familiar smells: paprika, wood smoke, freshly brewed coffee. But the mood did not last long. Carrying his belongings from the van to the house, his father was horrified to see a Victorian chair among them. Number 8211, a piece of furniture he unhesitatingly considered. He was also not happy to see her organize a collection of potted herbs on the kitchen ledge. Couldn't she put them somewhere else? For example, in his room. Irritated, Shelley asked what he had against them. They are a mess, he said. They are ruining the line of the house. In his eyes, only chives, a pleasantly vertical plant, could even be vaguely acceptable as an interior decoration. Shelley's father, who died in 2014, was Shelley Klein, a Serbian-born textile designer whose fabrics were popular in the 1960s with designers such as Chanel and Dior. But while his tweed and mohair adventures were both a commercial and critical success, his greatest and most durable achievement is surely the house he commissioned from the young British architect, P. Built in a modernist vernacular, High Sunderland, which is now listed, consists essentially of two wings inside which are various courtyards. These function as extensions of the interior, being either It is, in some ways, a very simple building, a simple pavilion constructed of wood and glass. Finally, there is its isolated setting. High Sunderland is completely surrounded by mature trees. Not that nature has always been popular with Bernat. What was he doing? She wondered. Isn't it obvious? He retaliated. In trying to get rid of the lichen. We planted these trees to reflect the white columns of the house. Now all these green things are spoiling them. From the day he took possession of High Sunderland until the day he left it, shortly before his death, Bernat was just as passionate about his design as T. Even if I wanted to go back, living with him was quite difficult, his daughter tells me now. Just like I liked him, he was not the easiest person. The house was his work of art, and anyone who dared to change even the smallest thing might as well have scribbled Guernica. What is strange, however, is that in the 6 years since his death, his father's influence on Shelley has increased rather than diminished. When they lived together, his mode was rebellious. High Sunderland was also easy to split in half. She was able to have her own living room, in which it was up to her to leave a trace of goods on the. But now I find it comforting to live more like before, she says. I am more inclined to quickly remove the damage. I find myself putting away cupboards. Maybe that's another way to keep him alive. Today in her North London apartment number 8211, High Sunderland was sold in 2018 number 8211. She is surrounded by things from Bernat, her paintings, some of which ins. And this too is a surprise. For a long time, the idea of packing High Sunderland was unimaginable. Its content seemed to belong to it so absolutely, the idea of taking them elsewhere seemed to her to be organ transplantation. After her father died, she knew the house should be sold. It was too expensive for her, a freelance writer, to run alone, and, unfortunately, the National Trust of Scotland chose not to take it. The process of doing it was tedious. It was important to find the right buyers, and we were lucky. Those who bid the most were also the most likely to cherish it. But when I spent a day with them, showing them how it worked, they sometimes said, "Oh, we would like to do this or that number 8211, and I couldn't bear it. What about moving day? It was scary," she said softly. It is always scary. Has she returned since? No. I will not come back. I can't number 8230, it's too painful. A tear runs down his cheek. Number 8211, enough fat to be clearly visible on Zoom, we communicate online. I'm sorry. It surprises me how painful it is. No, seeing it would be like rubbing salt in my wounds. I like to think of it as I remember. If she had been very wealthy, would she have stayed? Would she be there even now? She smiles. Oh yes. Of course I would. Bernat Klein's story makes the creation of High Sunderland even more unlikely. Number 8211, and yet that also partly explains it. Born in a town called Center, in a region of the Austro-Hungarian Empire that became part of Yugoslavia in 1918, his family was made up of Orthodox Jews who ran a textile business. Bernat was particularly close to his mother, Zorai, and his childhood was idyllic. But it suddenly ended when he was 14 and his father, Lipot, sent him to a yeshiva in Galanta, Czechoslovakia, where he was forced to study nothing but the Talmud from dawn to dusk, and where he was. Alas, there was no way out. 2 years later, his father took him even further, to Jerusalem, where he would be educated in another yeshiva by the city's chief rabbi. Number 8211, a man whose family he would H. Bernat arrived in Meir Shirim, an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood in Jerusalem, in 1938, and from the first moment was uncomfortable. He found it dull and restrictive, and he hated more and more his studies, the endless analysis of a seemingly endless text. He started out of the yeshiva, exploring the rest of the city, enjoying his bookstores and markets. He also began to question his faith. When a cousin of Zorai who lived in Palestine suggested he apply for a place at the Bezalel School of Arts, he was receptive. Number 8211, and soon after, he boldly left the yeshiva forever. He loved life in Bezalel. Number 8211. What a pleasure to use his eyes and hands like that. Number 8211. Although if he was serious about making a career in textiles, he had been told he would need to continue high. He did this by signing up for a course at the University of Leeds. But it was in 1945. Just before he left, he received a letter, the first from a family member in over 3 years. Her brother Moshe, who lived in a refugee camp outside Center, wrote to explain how the family had been arrested by the Germans, only he had managed to escape. Lippert had since made the return trip from Auschwitz, but he was the only one. Bernat went to Leeds knowing that Zorai was unlikely to be alive. It was in Leeds that he met Peggy, Shelley's mother, later a designer of knitwear. They were married in 1951 and spent part of their honeymoon at the Festival of Great Britain. After graduation, Bernat worked in 2 knitwear factories, the second in Galashiels, Scotland, the town in which he later founded his company, Colourcraft, which made scarves and other items for wool. He grew up so fast that he quickly bought his own mill, Neverdale number 8211, and it was on Neverdale looms that Colourcraft produced a tweed in shades of yellow and gold, orange and green that cocoa jar. Suddenly, Bernat was on the way. In July of the same year, Pierre Cardin, Christian Dior, Louis Ferraud, Guy Laroche, Nina Ricci, Yves Saint Laurent and Hardy Amies all ordered. Taste was his religion. He also came from his mother. Describe how she dressed, matching her clothes to her eye and hair color. But we are moving forward. In 1955, Peggy and Bernat were driving near Holmfirth in West Yorkshire when they spotted an extraordinary building through the trees, a house that turned out to be Farnley Hay, which an architect ca. For his brother, John. Bernat immediately wrote to Womersley, asking if he would work on something similar for him at the Scottish borders, where he had recently purchased land. For Womersley, admirer of Frank Lloyd Wright and Mies van der Rohe, this will be his first professional order. It would also be the start of his long-standing friendship with Bernat. He later built a house near High Sunderland. Did the house represent order after the chaos of war? Yes, I think so, said Shelley. Losing contact, not knowing where someone was, it had a huge impact on him, and the house was sort of an answer to that. I cannot describe enough how unpleasant the disorder makes him. He would be upset if he felt that things were not going well. But where did his taste come from? Few people in the 1950s borders aspired to own a pool cairn chair. In the lobby of High Sunderland, there was exactly such a piece of furniture, constructed of Nor did they take such an exception, as Bernat would do a little later, to the romantic whims of Laura Ashley, when teenage Shelley wore a dress much appreciated by the Welsh designer No. 8211, long and taste was his religion, really, says Shelley. But I think it also comes from his mother. He would describe how she dressed, matching her clothes to her eye and hair color No. 8211, and her house, which she made so comfortable. Initial influence. It came more slowly towards modern design. What about Peggy? Was she a modernist as passionate as Bernat, or did she just agree with him? In her book, Shelley describes Peggy's renegade cupboards, which contained contraband in the form of pro. She had always lived in Victorian homes before meeting him, and I think she would have been just as happy as she was to marry someone else. But when she fell in love with him, she was crazy. All he said was as if God had spoken. She has fully embraced their way of life. As a teenager, Shelley would have preferred to live somewhere like her classmates, a house with an attic, a house where it was possible to have secrets. Her friends, she said, mostly took High Sunderland in their stride, although its underfloor heating was always popular at a time and in a place where frostbite was a constant danger. But there is no doubt that seen from the outside, the world of the Kleins was glamorous, their house a kind of decor for his father's fashion shows, for the parties that her parents liked to organize. You hit something, she said, when I told her that I was thinking of High Sunderland, which rises among the trees like a fairy tale castle, albeit minus the turrets or castles. People fell in love with him, the way my father saw things. This is her. No other house No. 8211, no other house No. 8211, can ever compete for it. But she often visits him in her mind. There is not a day that goes by when I am not there, she said with a smile. What does she see during these trips? Well, I come in and No. 8230, from the hallway, I can see the blue of the kitchen floor, the tiles are the color of hyacinths. Then I go into the living room, and there it is, the landscape beyond the huge windows. It is so light and peaceful, and the fireplace makes it so warm. After that, I go into the dining room. Whenever I came home, my parents always made me the same dish, chicken with paprika and a cucumber salad that was special to my father. So I'll have a big whiff of it. Just a moment, she closes her eyes. The Transparent House by Shelley Klein is published by Chatto No. 038, Windus, £16.